Welcome to another episode of Healing Her Halo. I'm your host, Patience Murray, and I have someone on the show that I really want to introduce you to. And it's Shavontana Starr Davis. She's an attorney, author, keynote speaker, and nonprofit leader committed to protecting youth from sexual abuse and exploitation. She's a graduate of Florida State University with a degree in mass communications and a Juris Doctor from North Carolina Central University School of Law. Starr turned her personal experiences into a powerful mission. At the age of 7, Starr was sexually abused by family members, a trauma she kept silent for nearly 2 decades. A life changing conversation with her late grandmother, Maxine Davis, helped her discover the power of choosing joy, which became the cornerstone of her purpose. In 2007, Starr founded the Starr Institute, TSI for short, a nonprofit dedicated to educating and empowering youth and communities on child sexual abuse prevention. TSI has impacted over 3,000 individuals through its programs, and its annual 5K Run Plus Walk has garnered support from 800 participants across 34 states and 3 countries. In 2001, Starr published The Abuse Algorithm Lessons in Protecting Children from Sexual Abuse, highlighting the preventable nature of child sexual abuse as a public health crisis. That same year, she was honored as a L'Oreal Paris Women of Worth for her extraordinary community impact. When she's not advocating for change, Starr enjoys spending time with her family. She describes herself as a fun loving, faith fueled woman who believes in the power of joy with her most cherished role of being a mom. Her life's mission is to create meaningful change and to help young people shine where they are. Starr, thank you, so much. Thank you so much for joining
Thank
the
you for
show.
having me. Thank you for having me. Thank you for creating this space so that we could be in a space to share with one another and hold space for each other. So thank you so much for having me.
Wow. I appreciate that and I receive that. And I love connecting with beautiful souls like you because you've been through so much, but you don't let the so much affect how you show up in the world. You don't let that affect how you shine. And where do you get that resilience from?
I would like to say that it's been me and God for a long time. I cannot take the credit. You know, a 7-year old doesn't have the wherewithal um, to know how to have that joy, right? And so I do think that you know, it is part of my calling. My faith is one of my giftings. And I have to be honest, though, and I have to tell you that it's a conversation that I had with my grandmother. I must have been in like middle school, and she was like, "Sorry, you have a really bad attitude," and I was like, "No." Yeah,
Really?
yeah, and I did, but only to her. Like nobody on the outside
Mm-hmm.
world knew what was going on in my life. To see me, you
Mm.
always um, saw the happy Starr and the joyous Starr, and there was nothing going on. No one knew what was going on inside the four walls of my home. And so she was like, "Yeah, you have a bad attitude." And I was like, "Well, grandma, that's just the way that I am." And she was like, "No, that's the way that you choose to be." And immediately, I
Mm.
mean, it changed the trajectory of my life because here my grandmother was a prime example, right? So just to back it up and
Mm-hmm.
give you a little bit. I'm not going to make it seem like, oh, everything was terrible when I was growing up. It wasn't. My mom met a man and my life changed at 7, right? 7 is when the molestation began, and
Mm-hmm.
that's also when my mom became addicted to drugs, right? And so the summer before the 6th grade, I moved in with my grandmother. And even though my grandfather wasn't physically abusive to my grandmother, he was a functional alcoholic. So he would come home
Mm.
and call her all kind of names, say all kind of things. And mind you, this time I'm sleeping in the bed with my grandma. I slept in the bed with my grandmother until the 10th grade. So we're both hearing this, okay?
Mm.
But he would
Yeah.
not miss work. He came into work at 4 o'clock in the morning, and he was out that door at 6 o'clock. And he worked at GE for 30
Mm-hmm.
plus years. My grandmother worked at Philip Morris for 30 plus years. And so it was one of those things where I saw my grandmother fight her battles at the dining room table, having Bible study with yes and amen. That's how I saw her. My grandmother is the total
Mm-hmm.
opposite of me. So I'm outgoing, never met a stranger. My grandmother was very meek and calm and quiet and
Oh.
just loving. I don't think my grandmother ever raised her voice, right? That wasn't just the type. But she
Oh.
had this quiet strength and she didn't complain. And in the midst
Mm.
of them also both working, they owned A&M Liquors, which was a liquor store, but kind of think you remember the show Cheers? So that was our neighborhood Cheers. So it wasn't just like a liquor store. We had a pool table and a jukebox, and it was kind of like a
Okay.
home away
Okay.
from home. Like,
It
it
was
was
the vibe.
the
Yeah.
home in the community, right? So it was another space, and so
Yeah.
just in looking at her and how she moved, right? And how she was
Mm-hmm.
still joyous and she wasn't a complainer and she was holding down everything, right? Um, and so it
Wow.
just it was a model, right? It was a model for me to see that, no, everything is not perfect, but even in the midst of having things go on in your life, there's still always a reason to be joyous. There is still joy. And so that is why the Starr Institute is named the Starr Institute. It's because I believe that we all have a light inside of us. And if given the
Mm.
opportunity to shine, we will. And so our slogan is shine where you are because sometimes life is life
That's beautiful.
and you still have to shine,
Yes, it
right? You
does.
still shine even in those spaces, even if you are the only light in that situation that you're in right now. And so that is something that I
That's wow.
adopted.
That's really interesting because when I have like hard days and I feel like I'm invisible,
Mm.
you know, I always remind myself, this slogan just came out of nowhere internally, is that a star is going to shine no matter
Mm.
where they're at.
That's it. And isn't it going to?
So it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter where you're at. It doesn't matter if you're in a place that doesn't
Mm-hmm.
value you, that acts like they can't
Mm-hmm.
see you. A star is going to shine
No
no matter
matter.
what. So it's really divine that we're having this conversation right now. And it didn't really dawn on me putting two and two together that that's something that I would say internally
Mm-hmm.
to myself. And I was getting ready to have this interview with you. I think it's just beautiful. I love what you do. I love, that the mission, the purpose that you have to help ignite a light in other people. And it really aligns with what healing her
Yeah.
halo is. It really does. Putting that spark back in people's halo. So I don't want to gloss over the fact that you shared some really
Mm-hmm.
heavy information when you were
Yeah.
7. You were sexually abused. And what was that conversation like when you, at that young age, had to reveal or share your truth? Was it received well? What was that experience like
So,
for you?
as a child, the only person I told was my best
Mm-hmm.
friend, and she was also a
Mm.
child. And so, and I had her to promise to keep my secret, but we know that some secrets shouldn't be kept, right? And so it was
Mm-hmm.
actually during the pandemic, right? Because I've had, by the grace
Wow.
of God, the same best friend my entire life. We met in the first grade. We became best friends the summer before the sixth grade, and we have been rocking and rolling since then. I
That's
know,
beautiful.
right?
I love that.
She's my little angel here on earth. And
Mm.
so,
Shout out to
listen,
friend.
shout out to girlfriend.
Ooh,
But
real
she's also my
friends.
sister, okay? And at this point, we are sisters. But she was the only person that I told. And what was so crazy was
Mm.
during the pandemic, we were talking and it just all kind of came out, because it was about to be a transition because my family and I were relocating down here to South Florida
Mm.
from Atlanta. And she talked about how when I told her that as a child, she felt like from that point forward, she always had to protect me. And that just meant
Mm.
basically, well, if she's always at our house, then she can't be anywhere where somebody can get to her type of thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
But it was
Mm-hmm.
heavy on her, right? Because she didn't tell anyone. And we're talking about someone who both of her parents, and I'm really close with them, and her father actually, we just buried him last month. Um,
I'm so
so both
sorry.
of them are pastors. Like, They are, for all intents and purposes, second set of parents for me. And the
Mm-hmm.
thing was, like, they didn't question it. They kind of figured, like, well, maybe Star has something going on. But with the way they opened up their hearts and their home to me, I mean, I became their child. You know what I'm saying? And that is just kind of how I was operating. So when I told Kia, I said, when we get older, I want to help kids like me. And I didn't know what that looked like. It was just a promise that I made to myself and a promise that I made to her. Fast forward, I'm at my law school graduation with my mom, my grandmother, and my godmother. And those are my trio of leading ladies. And I
Mm-hmm.
tell them, and I don't know why I told them. I mean, I'm at my law school graduation. We're celebrating. This is a big
Mm-hmm.
thing. And I think maybe in the back of my head, I always knew I was going to do something. And did not
Right.
still didn't know what that looked like, but I know that in sharing my story that I'm also sharing my mom's story, so I wanted to let them know. And
Yeah.
that was over 2 decades later. And it, for them, it was like a crashing blow. Like, well, why didn't you say anything? Well, why didn't, and me, I'm like, well, gosh, we had so much going on already at the time, um,
Mm-hmm.
that I didn't. And so it helped me to understand, in creating the Starr Institute, that even if young people have trusted adults, and that's what we are championing, we're championing those trusted adults. When they are that age, your friends mean everything to you. And that is who you're talking to.
Mm-hmm.
And that is who you're confiding in for the most part. And that's whose opinion you value, right? Um, and so it's just one of those things where it was like, okay, I gotta like be able to bridge that gap. I've got to be able to put those things in. But they received it well. They were hurt, obviously. I think that there was um, guilt.
So, I do want to take us back to that day because this is a super huge time for you
Yeah.
graduating from law school, right? You worked so hard to get to that moment, and in that moment, you shared something so deeply hurtful that you carried for decades,
Well, because I was
right?
still, what I think, I was still in the mode of surviving. I was still in the mode of
Mm.
surviving. There is a difference. I had in my life, I have learned to keep moving, right? So I give myself time
Mm-hmm.
limits
Mm-hmm.
to be in my feelings. And depending on the severity of the situation, that's how much time I'm allowed for me to be in my feelings. Something else that I had learned when I guess I had just adopted as a child is like, hey, I never want to have kids. I never want to be married because I never want to be in a position where I can't protect someone and where I can't
Mm.
be there. Someone needs me to show up and I fail to do so. So what I could always make sure was on the up and up was my education and my career. So I was laser focused on those
Mm-hmm.
things, right? So, a lot of times people say, oh, well, how do victims react? They're differently. Everyone's not going to act out. Everyone's not going to be promiscuous. Everyone is not going to just do it. I was laser focused. I was like, I have to get my education and I have to get as far away from these people as possible. Okay. So that was my
Mm-hmm.
mindset. So
Mm-hmm.
it's always been, well, you got to keep going. You can't just get somewhere and roll up in a ball in the fetal position and just let that be it. And so I think
Mm-hmm.
for me, I was still in a place of self sabotage, right? Because again, at that time, I can be totally honest with you and tell you that I did not love myself. I had my son when I was 30 years old, and I really had to talk to God, and before I had my son, and was like, I need you to show me how to be the mother that I'm supposed to be. If this is what you want me to be, you
Mm-hmm.
have to make me be those things, right? So I hadn't come into that space yet. So I was still in survival
Mm-hmm.
mode. I was still in self-sabotaging mode. And again, I'm in my creative mode. I also am saying, listen, I am about to do a thing, and I recognize that it's going to impact you as well. And I love my mom. I love my grandmother. I love my godmother. But I'm not going to let that love for you stop me from doing what I feel like God has called me to do.
And sharing your
That part.
truth. And sharing your truth. It's your story, and you have ownership over your experience, and that nobody can
Yeah.
take that from you, you know. So what was their do you remember what they said to you in the moment? Was it like a gasp? Was it like, I can't believe, that this happened to you? Like, what were the words? Like, how do you even find the words on a day, where you weren't prepared at all? I wonder what what
I
that
mean,
moment was for them reacting to
they were
your response.
definitely stunned. Um, and
Yeah.
I think they were in shock because it was
Yeah.
just kind of like, what? Say what? You didn't say anything.
Mhm.
It was really kind of that. Like they all apologized.
Mhm.
It wasn't their fault, but they all apologized.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, but they're calm people, so it wasn't like, oh, I'm about to now. Later, my mom told me like I was
Mhm.
thinking that I wanted to go press some charges and da 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 da. And I'm like, you know,
Yeah.
but it was something that they had, to reconcile with too. And again, and I didn't know this then because obviously I wasn't a parent then. But now, right, as a
Mhm.
mother of two, it's like, there is no thank you.
Congratulations.
There is no handbook to this thing, right? You are doing the best that you
Mhm.
know how to do with the knowledge, the support, and the resources that you have. And people really don't understand
Mhm.
that. And so I told them that again, not in wanting to, I want them to know like, y'all have equipped me. Y'all and God has
Mhm.
equipped me to make it. And now this is the next
Mhm.
place that I am going. And I just want you to know, and I have to say, they were all tremendously supportive. At this time now, my grandmother has passed away. She passed away in 2020, and my godmother passed away in 2022. Um,
I'm so
Thank
sorry
you.
for your loss.
And so it's just like, but they were so supportive. They were so supportive.
Yeah.
They understood. They didn't try to silence me. They recognized what I'm doing. And something that's so beautiful about what my mom said was, baby, like, it's not about me. Because I asked her, I'm like, are you okay with this? And she's like, yeah. She's like, it's not about me. It's about how we can help other people, right? So it's not only that
Mhm.
space of
Mhm.
the abuse, but it's also that there can be redemption and reunification of,
Mhm.
family. And, my prayer was always to like just make my mom and our relationship new, right? Just make it new. So
Mm.
I think that, you know, feelings
Yeah.
feelings are
Yeah.
not facts, and and their feelings
Right.
were valid, and they felt what they felt.
Mhm.
And then we worked through it, and then we processed it, and then I had to give them space to be able to feel how they felt, because even though I had been living
Yeah.
with that for so long, it was brand new to them.
And I can only imagine, the nuances of how those relationships may have changed, after sharing this information. I'm asking these questions about the response because a lot of times when it comes to trauma survivors, I feel like they're not always in the most trauma informed
Hmm.
spaces, and the people who they share their wounds with may not always know how to respond or not always know how to offer support because maybe they've never experienced anything like that, or maybe they're lost for words, and that lost for words can seem insensitive to the person who has experienced
Yeah.
that trauma. So I think it's just good to see examples of positive examples of how you can support a trauma survivor, especially with them sharing their truth or sharing their wounds with you. So thank you for
Thank
sharing
you.
that with us. Yeah, yeah. So let's fast forward a little bit. And when did you know that you were going to do the Starr Institute? Like, how did you get to that point where you were going to establish an
Mhm.
organization and actually empower youth and anybody who's ever been affected by sexual abuse?
So I was a public defender in Fulton County in Atlanta. And for the bulk of my time that I was there, I was working in Superior Court, so representing adults who were charged with criminal offenses. And then after we had our
Mm-hmm.
daughter Parker, it was like, I don't want to try murder, rape, and robbery with a newborn and a 2 year old. So
No,
I went down
too
too
much.
much. So I went down to juvenile court, and that is minors charged with criminal offenses. And so I went down to juvenile court. And to be honest, I never wanted to go down there because I always knew that I would be triggered by those kids. And now I'm coming at it from a different lens because I'm a
Yeah.
mom now. And so I literally, like the first few weeks that I was walking into court, like I was wiping my eyes because I'm like, this is a baby, right? I don't care if they're 15.
Mm-hmm.
Someone is supposed to love them, support them, provide for them. And so I had a client. She was 15 years old. She was being raised by her grandmother. Neither of her parents were in her life. And so I was already getting all the feels, like identifying with this baby. And so I was going over the police report with
Mm-hmm.
her. And I'm like, okay, so how do you know this man in the police report? And she's like, I know him from when I used to sell, and she said the P word. And she said, but I don't do it
Mm-hmm.
anymore. And she said it just like the sky was blue.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, oh man, time for me to go. It
Yeah.
was like I had been there, for 5 years. And I always feel like me going to law school was divine intervention because I never wanted to be a lawyer. I majored in mass communications at Florida State because I wanted to be a broadcast journalist. Um, yeah. And
Wow.
so, 18-year-old Star said, I'm going to go to Florida State. I'm going to move to Atlanta because that's where Black people prosper. Okay. So that's what I did. But then you also,
In that part.
but then you also need to get a job.
That is the slogan for Atlanta, literally.
But it was like, you need to get a job. So
Yeah.
I started working at a law firm, a family law firm, and then started working at a criminal defense firm. And I sat a rape, child molestation, a double
Mm.
homicide, and a murder trial. And I was like, oh, I can do this. And then when I do it, I want to be a public
Yeah.
defender. I want to represent people who come from where I come from, be a voice for the voiceless. So that was the thought process. And so what I think was God wanted me to be able to see how the people I serve, how they're affected in the criminal legal system. And so that was a good part of it because oftentimes they find themselves in the criminal legal system and why and how, of
Mm-hmm.
course, the law is slow to catch up and a lot of people don't recognize, what's going on and they'll think, oh, this child is just acting out. This child is this. No, this child has experienced some trauma. Um,
Yeah.
so once that happened, I was like, you know what, God, is it time? And it was
I
like,
see what
there's
you're doing.
never going to be a perfect time. I would
Yeah.
always say that, my husband and I are humble public servants. He's in law enforcement. I was a public defender. We're not trust fund babies, but I trust God. So,
I love that. We're not trust fund babies, but we
yeah,
trust God. And that's all the resources
listen,
that we
because
need,
He is the
honestly.
source, to be honest. He's the source, and
He is the
everything else is
source.
a resource. And the type of person that I am is I'm all in. So, I took my
Mm-hmm.
401k because I started the Starr Institute February 7th, 2017. So I took my 401k, resigned, and used that as my salary for the year. And I started going to all kind of trainings. What does this look like? Who do I need? And then being in the spaces because I wasn't going to be able to fully put myself into that and still be a zealous advocate for my clients. So now, shoosh,
Mm.
we're in our 7th year now. And have relocated.
Congratulations.
Thank you. We have gone from, Atlanta to Miami. And it's been really special because the pandemic was really the time that we were able to like reimagine what it is that we do. Who do
Mm,
we serve? How are we doing this? Because when we first started out, it was just for girls. But then as I started
mhm,
sharing my story and being in the space, I started recognizing that people aren't using correct anatomical terms for body parts with kids. And that's a disservice to
mm,
them. People, it's a lot of things that we as adults have to unlearn, and people are still uncomfortable
mhm,
having conversations about sex, about sexuality, um, really understanding there's a lot of misinformation out here. And then we have the internet, which I always say, is a gift and a
mhm.
curse, but those kids can go out there and learn how to build a bomb, make a baby, or bake a cake. And it's, who do you want them to get the information from? Their friends and the internet are from you.
Exactly.
And so just really being out there, because I am just a proponent that the trauma doesn't have to teach the lesson. We don't have to let that be the way they get it.
Not at all. Not at all. And you said so many great things, and so many powerful things about just the accessibility that children have to things that they probably should not be consuming, online. And that's shaping their perspective on life, that's shaping their perspective on sexuality, and all
Mm-hmm.
these different things about what's okay and what's not okay, what's normal, what's not normal. So we do need to have those tough conversations in the home. And I heard you say in the conversation something about, you know, triggers or you being triggered yourself, and also seeing someone, a child who may have gone through something, seemingly acting out, but maybe they're triggered by something and they have a story to tell and they don't have the
Mm-hmm.
language to to
Mm-hmm.
voice their story. Like, so what are some of those signs, I guess, like especially if those of us
Mm-hmm.
who have kids, right? And or we have young
Mm-hmm.
family members, how can we identify when we should have a conversation? Like, hey, come here, I noticed this or that, like maybe we should, have a heart to heart. Is everything okay? Like, how do you even begin that conversation to even ask, has something happened? Like, how do you put that
So
into
it's in two
words?
parts, right? So what I tell parents is, and my kids are 10 and 8, and I have been talking to them. I can remember my son and my mom was like, "You can't teach him penis and vagina," and I was like, "Ma, I can and will. It's a body part." So my son and daughter have always said that, right? And it's because from the
Mhm.
time that they can talk, right? You start having conversations with them. I make everything a learning experience anyway, right? So you start having those
Mhm.
conversations using the correct anatomical terms for body parts. That's number one. And then it's also start explaining to them. So as young as they have been, as long as they've been able to really understand, right? So about 3 years old,
Mhm.
4 years old, hey, we're going to the doctor, right? No one is supposed to see your penis or your vagina. No one's supposed to touch it. But when we go to the doctor has to see it because they have to check you out and make sure you're okay. But mommy and daddy, one of us or both of us are here with you. And that's the only reason that that's okay. So you
Mhm.
keep building upon those conversations. Then you just have regular conversations. Do you know how much Paw Patrol and Mickey Mouse Clubhouse and all the conversations that I've had? You are invested in those conversations. No, you might not actually care about those conversations, but it's of interest to them. And so when they're talking to you about those things,
Mhm.
you are engaged with those things. And you're starting that from small, right? So then it's like they feel
Mhm.
comfortable talking to you. Oh, they care about what it is that I care about. They care about what it is that I have to say. All right, then we're getting older. Then we're starting to have friends. Okay, who are your friends, baby? I get the rundown every day. I get the tea every day. Now, my
Yeah.
kids, again, they're in elementary school, so I am the world, right? They want to tell me all the and I promise,
Yeah.
I pray that they want to tell me all the things all the time. I know that there will become a point
Mhm.
when they probably don't want to do that, but they do. So Another thing that we say is we don't keep secrets, right? So even if we're doing something for the
Mm-hmm.
other parent or for somebody who's like, this is a surprise, right? The surprise is because we don't want
Mm-hmm.
them to know right now, but they're going to eventually know because we want them to be happy when they find out about this. But secrets,
Mm-hmm.
we don't keep.
Mm-hmm.
We don't do that. Don't ever let, and I'm very blunt with them about that. Don't let any, my husband and I don't use that language, and you don't allow other people, like, you talk to them. I've always talked to them like they were adults. They can understand, right? They really can understand, and they're
Mm-hmm.
smarter
Mm-hmm.
than a lot of people want to give them credit for, and they're intuitive, right? And so now you've set up this
Mm-hmm.
situation where it's they want to talk to you. So then they talk to you about their friends. You want to
Mm-hmm.
know who those friends are. Who are those friends? Now, my kids don't have phones. My
Right.
kids don't have phones. But if your kids are of age that they have phone, let's check the phone. What's going on in the phone? Who are you
Mm-hmm.
talking to in this phone? What are you saying in this phone? We have those conversations, like, so in our My Safety Starts With Me workshop series that we do for our 12 to 17 year olds. One of the whole workshops is about internet safety, and we get real. We talk about
Mm-hmm.
trolling and catfishing and sexting, and because a lot of the things that they are doing, they're unaware that it's illegal. Do you know what you're doing? You're posting. What are you
Mm-hmm.
posting? I have them to Google themselves. What are you sharing, right? So if you are having these
Mm-hmm.
conversations with the young people in your lives, and it doesn't have to be your children. Maybe you're a coach, maybe you're an aunt, maybe you're an uncle, maybe you're a mentor, maybe you're a teacher. Kids gravitate to who they gravitate, right? To. And so then I tell them, like, have you identified your trusted adult? We identify what that is. And then I tell them, you put that trusted adult on notice. You let them know, hey, I love you. I care about you. I know that you do those same things for me, and I feel like I can come talk to you. So then that adult knows, oh, I'm on notice. I need to show up, and I need to show up consistently without judgment and allow them to be able to come to you in that space. So if you start out that, because a lot of times people
Mm-hmm.
are like, oh, it just needs to be a one-time talk. And then let me give you this too. If you are uncomfortable
Mm-hmm.
as the adult, as the parent, then you got to reach out to
Right. Let's
someone
talk about it.
who can speak with them about it, because your
Mm-hmm.
uncomfortability then creates a space where they are have at a disadvantage because they have a lack of knowledge. And so we can't do that. We got to fill that
Mm-hmm.
gap.
That is so good. What you just said right there is so good because it's not just about understanding, how to find the words if you don't have them. It's also taking some awareness for yourself and realizing, you know what, this is above my head. I don't have the language for this. I don't know how to approach this or have that conversation. Maybe because I was never given that
Mm-hmm.
conversation. So it doesn't feel,
Yep.
real to you. So you have to find the resources, and that's where the Starr Institute comes in. That's where your safety
Mm-hmm.
workshops come in, where you can have these moments with your child and you're learning together.
Absolutely, that part. And to the whole point of us having this awesome conversation, sometimes I have not worked through my own trauma, right? So sometimes it's
Mm-hmm.
triggering for me. So that's okay. So then it is okay incorporating these resources, like therapy is a real thing. I love God, and He created therapists. Sometimes we have to do
Amen.
that, right? We have to do that
Yeah.
because we have to learn. Because what ends up happening is we cope, but sometimes those coping mechanisms are not healthy, right? And so we have to be able to
Mm-hmm.
get into a space, because healing is not linear, right? Some days are better than
Mm-hmm.
others. You know, some days you're just kind of like, in some spaces I'm healed further along in other spaces, but you got to be able to figure out, how can I make this, like, how can I get to that wholeness, how can I get to that wholeness, and it's a process.
And and speaking of wholeness, so I had put together a healing guide, right? Healing tips that work, a survivor's guide to wholeness. And, there's a lot of different tips in there and things like that. But just to get your thoughts, because I feel like no one person has all the
Mm-hmm.
answers to anything. And I feel like it's through shared experiences and sharing our story that's how we really understand how everybody else is going through and getting through what they're
Mm-hmm.
overcoming, right? So when you're triggered, how do you cope? How do you regulate your nervous system in those moments where you feel like your chest is getting tight or maybe you're shaking, whatever it is for you? How do you handle those moments?
Sometimes for me, I'm a deep breather type of person. So like it's a legit,
Okay.
right? It's like,
Hmm. Just a inhale, exhale. Do you hold
yeah,
your
I
breath at
try to,
all
I
and
just
then
try,
release
but
it?
depending on the severity, okay? So sometimes it might be
Yeah, yeah,
right because I'm
yeah.
really trying to,
Shorter
but
breaths.
sometimes
Yeah.
it's a right, and then it's like right.
Mm-hmm.
It's that, and
Mm-hmm.
then it's also I have to start talking to myself, right? Because what I find a
Mm.
lot of times is when we are triggered, then that internalized narrative that we have of how broken we are and how unworthy we are and how all invisible we are, all of that starts popping up, all of
Mm-hmm.
that starts popping up, and I literally have to stop and say, you are fearfully and wonderfully made. Yes, those experiences shaped your existence, but they do not define you, right? And it is in the past. And I am thankful for the past. Because of that, I am able to be used as a vessel and help so many people, right? And, girl, I have to tell myself, I'd be like, he called my name, he erased my shame, and
Yes.
he kept me. And that's it. And I'm not going to allow, because if you let those thoughts in, they take over. They take over. And it's so much. It took me so much work to get to a space where I actually loved myself, where I actually felt like I was deserving of love. And that was so important for me to be able to have my kids because I'm like, God, they saved my life. You know what I'm saying? Like, not to say that,
Mm-hmm.
you know, they are my only purpose, but he lets me see that you are worthy of this. I trust you so much that I'm going to give you these two little people to steward over. That is not something to be taken lightly, especially when we know how much of a struggle it can be for some women to be able to conceive a baby. So the fact that he allows me to be able to show up in that way for them, you are
Mm-hmm.
important. You are worthy.
He
He
sees you.
sees you. And yes, those things happen to you, right? They happen to you. We can't take those things away. But I can't tell you that I would be who I am without those things. And so, no, I am not of the mindset that you have to go through trauma to be able to do greatness. I am just of the mindset that I went through a thing and it just equipped me. It's like it's the training. It was what I needed to do to be able
Mm-hmm.
to impact these lives that I am. And for that, I say thank you because it didn't kill me. It didn't kill me. And now, when I get to work with these young people and when I get to work with these parents and I get to see, like, you can literally see the transformation in a person, whether that's their confidence increasing, whether that's them being able to connect with that trusted adult, whether it's a parent and child relationship, they're actually talking to one another now, right? They're actually in relationship with
Mm-hmm.
one another. When you see a kid start believing in themselves, when they can start seeing beyond whatever this circumstance is, right? And then I have to get to it because depending
Mm-hmm.
on who some of the young people are that I'm working with, instead of punching you in your face when you have a problem, when I have a problem with you, I punch a wall. That's progress.
Mm-hmm.
Then I move from
Mm-hmm.
punching a wall to breathing 10 times. Then I move from just removing myself altogether from the it's these steps that are all progress. And
Yeah.
I think that we have been so conditioned to be like, oh, your progress has to look like this and this that, and then you have
Mhm.
arrived.
Mhm.
No, everybody is an individual.
I'm so glad you said that. Celebrate your progress. Every milestone is important, and that really does help you fuel the journey to keep going and to keep making more milestones, reaching more milestones. And when you speak, Star, I was fighting back tears over here because I just felt every word you said. It just like the vibration in which you speak on. It's healing. And you are the epitome of what healing her halo means. Like you really do when you speak, you are putting a spark back into somebody's halo. You're igniting a light in people, in me today. So I deeply, gratefully appreciate you, your time and your presence. And if you could say anything at all to a woman who may have been holding on to something for a couple decades, and maybe she wants to say something, she doesn't know how to say it, she wants to share it, doesn't know how to introduce the topic, what can you tell her or him?
I would say that one, nobody is owed your story. If you never
Mm,
want to say any of it, or if you want to say a piece of it, it has to be something that you feel. That's not the only way that you can help people, right? So that's number one. No one is owed your story.
mm,
Everybody is not going to be called to do a nonprofit, to be a speaker. You could just be standing in the gap for somebody. You could show up for somebody. You could be there as a support for somebody. And some people will never know, right? So don't feel like you have to do
mm,
that. But if you do feel, right, that you want to speak out, you do it in your own time. It might not be on some big platform. I think we live in this society where it has to be all of these things. You might share it with a girlfriend. You might share it with a student. You might share it with, someone who comes to you who is going through something and you feel compelled to let them know, right? But it's always on your
mhm,
terms, in your space. You are the author of that, and that is yours and yours alone. That's not something that somebody else can take away. So I would say, if that is, you'll know. If it's for you to speak on it, you'll know. And something that I have learned is that anytime I speak, I'm always like, God, less of me, more of you. And He'll put the words, He'll give you the
mhm,
words to say. Um, and it might, sometimes it's not even a word. You might hold somebody's hand, you might give somebody a hug, right? Um,
mhm,
but that would be my suggestion. Just do it on your terms, right? Because if you have experienced
mhm.
something traumatic, something has happened to you that was not on your terms, that was beyond your control. And so when it comes to sharing your story, that absolutely has to be on your terms and not a narrative that anybody else can add to or take away from.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful. And what would you say to people who are holding space for trauma survivors who experience sexual abuse? How could they support them in whatever facet that they want to share their story, not share their story? How could they support them? What would be the
So
best
if you
approach?
are being a support, um, understand that that's it. You're not there to fix it. You're not there. And you also, in being a support, because it can be a lot, you have to know your limits too, right? And you have to be vocal
Mm,
about those. And it might be, you know what, Star, I love you. I want to be here. I don't want to know any details. Or sometimes I can't take this right now. And that's okay. And as the person who is giving you, I should be able to respect that, right? So you have to set your
mhm,
boundaries. Understand that you're not a fixer. You're not here to fix it. You didn't do it. You don't need to apologize, right? And something that I've learned, and I've been trying to incorporate this, like with my children, with my spouse, just anybody, it's like, what do you need? Am I here to be, you need me to just listen? I'm here to listen. You need me to offer a solution? I'm here to offer a solution, right? Sometimes we just always want to go in the fix. I even have to tell myself, being a parent, being an attorney, I'm rushing to fix her moment. And sometimes people don't need that. People just sometimes want you to listen and not say anything, and just listen and not say anything. You know what? So I'm calling you to vent. I don't need. Okay, let's go. All right. Oh, I need a prayer. Okay, I got you. Bow your head. You know. So just
Mm-hmm.
be. You have to effectively communicate. Like, what is it? How do I need to show up for you? Because I think a lot of times, and this is trauma or not trauma, right? People want people to
Mm-hmm.
support them, and we want to do it, but sometimes we want to do it in the ways that we know how to do, and that's not what you need. So you have to be vocal about what does that support look like for you. So one of my friends and I, we saw this on the reel, so now we do it, and it's like, I need 8 minutes. You got 8 minutes. We'll text each other, you got 8 minutes, and that means we need to have a real conversation. Like, I
Mm,
really need you, I need to talk through something. Okay, then I know what that means, you
I
know?
love that.
So just make
Mm-hmm.
it,
Mm-hmm.
be supportive, but be the support that they need. Because, sometimes you're not helping somebody if the help that you're giving is not helping, right? So just want to help in the way
Yeah.
that they need.
I think that perspective shift is really going to help a lot of relationships grow. And I do want to ask you this because, even when we were in the beginning of figuring out our technical difficulties, it sounds like you had somebody that cared about you, helping you navigate through those challenges as
My
well,
husband,
right? So, uh, your husband, your
my man, not
man.
your
So
man.
now, your man, your man, your man. And my husband and I, we've experienced a lot of different things together, traumatic experiences. And I feel like when it comes to love, loving after tragedy, loving after trauma, it's
Yes.
difficult. And how are you able to, especially after experiencing sexual abuse, release that trauma and allow love in and allow yourself to be loved by someone?
Um,
How do you
baby,
do that?
listen, the Lord, because I told you I was over here on some
The
self
Lord.
some self sabotage. Let me tell you, Devin and I have
Yeah,
been,
yeah.
sheesh, married. We've been married for 15 years. We've been together for 19. We met in college, and
Woo-hoo!
when we were, by the time we started talking, it was just like, let me tell you something, sir. We can be friends. I'm not trying to be more than that. And that was the type of time I was on.
Mm-hmm.
And then it was just like,
Mm-hmm.
bruh, he became my best friend. He was my best friend. And every time I
Oh.
felt us getting close, I would be like, oh, I need a break. Oh, I need a break. And finally, he was like one day,
Mm-hmm.
like, we
Mm-hmm.
can't take no more breaks. Either we gonna be together or we not. And again, that
Mm-hmm.
was from me and my trauma, feeling like, if my own parents can't be there and show up for me, like, how would I expect a man, right? So that was some healing that I, had to go through. And I'm telling you, but for the grace of God, outside of that, I think the fact that we were really friends is what, because the
Mm-hmm.
reality is, husband and wives be beefing, okay? Sometimes we don't want to see your face
Yeah.
and we don't want to talk to you. Because we're friends,
Right.
I still want to know, what do you want to eat? Do you need something? Like, you know what I'm
Mm-hmm.
saying? Those types.
That
Yeah,
foundation
so
is there.
I think that if you, especially if it is like because intimacy is not just sex, right? So it's being
Right.
able to
Right.
have those quiet moments. It's being able to really talk to one another and to be able to understand, like, how I feel. Maybe because of certain situations that you had, I can't do a certain thing, and then and that being
Mm-hmm.
respected and honored. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And then maybe I can get to a space.
Mm-hmm.
So I just think that it took a lot of work for me. It did, because I struggled with loving myself, so I didn't think that a person could love me, and I didn't see those good examples. Like my mom has never been married, and then like I said, like my grandpa was married. My grandmother and grandfather were married, but he wasn't being a great example of what that didn't look like
Mm-hmm.
what I wanted to spend the rest of my life with, you know. Um,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
then as I got older, then I learned that he had his own trauma that he had not dealt with, right?
Mm,
So it really
yeah.
is one of those things where we have to be able to grow together. And I know that, people are looking as power couples and we got to be have all this wealth, and I'm like, are we wealth and love,
Mm-hmm.
peace, joy? Are we wealthy in those things? Because that's always my prayer
Come on now.
in our household. Is your household covered with that? Are you leading with those things, right? Because money comes and goes, right? These looks and these bodies are going to fade.
Mm-hmm.
What do you have outside of those things? Do you like one another? Because we cut up. We have a good
Mm-hmm.
time with just us two, but that's
Yeah.
because we're friends. That's
Yes.
because we like each other. That's because, you know, we want to push each other. And in doing that, like we elevate one another, right? So I think that,
I love
you
that.
know, for me, it's always going to be you got to have God at the center of that. He has to be the
Mm-hmm.
head of
At the
that
center.
because then everything else will fall into place. But if that's not, y'all not on the same with that, for me, it's not going to work. Because
Mm-hmm.
when all stuff hits the fan, even before it hits the fan, we already praying. But
Mm-hmm.
but when it does, I got to know who's riding with me. So,
Yeah. Yeah. I think there's some room for you to venture into this space of helping couples navigate through any traumas, you know what I mean, as a couple, and how you can support each other through that. I think there's a lot of space for you. I think your voice is needed in this arena. I do. When you were talking, I'm just like, man, I would love to just be poured into this way, like with this couples focus of a married focus, or if you're engaged, whatever, in a relationship, and you're dealing with people who are both carrying their own wounds in
mm-hmm.
a relationship, and how you can be there for each other, how you can kind of switch roles of being okay, supportive and understanding and supportive, and then knowing when, hey, vocalizing, I need your support in this way right now. I think there's so much to learn in that. I feel like you would be the perfect person to sort of lead that initiative of helping couples heal through trauma, and become stronger. And that might be a new workshop or
Good. From
something. I
your
don't know.
lips to God's ears. Come on now.
I would go to that
Okay.
workshop. I would go to that
Okay.
workshop. I'm dragging my husband too. We going.
Look, I love to see it.
Star, I see so many amazing things that you could do, and you're already doing so much. Well, so what are some of the services, like how can we connect with you? What are some services you offer, like if some women right now want to take action and just connect with you and be a part of your
Oh, okay.
movement?
Well, absolutely. Well, we are on Instagram, the Starr Institute, Star with two R's, and then underscore. We're on Facebook, the Starr Institute. I'm on LinkedIn, Shavontana Starr Davis. And then our website, thestarrinstitute.org. But really, listen, we have our core programming is our My Safety Starts With Me workshop series for youth, boys and girls, ages 12 to 17. And that is a five workshops. So we cover sex trafficking awareness and safety 101, internet safety, self esteem, goal setting, and then they have a celebration, a graduation is the fifth one. We also have for the adults, because one of my dear friends, Amy, she always says kids come with adults, right? So you can't teach the babies and not teach the
Mm-hmm.
parents. So we have the sex trafficking
Mm-hmm.
awareness and safety 101 and internet safety. Also, training for adults, but then we can also do because like how you might see it, we have it for professionals. So how it may come up for lawyers, how it may come up for medical professionals, like those different things like that. We also
Mhm.
have a workshop called Vulnerability, Visibility, Value. That's a training for nonprofit organizations that or any, I shouldn't say nonprofit organizations, I should say youth serving
Mhm.
organizations. So the policies that you should have in
Mhm.
place, different things, that what they should know, how adverse childhood experiences affect young people. So those different things as well. I also serve as a keynote speaker. And something exciting that we have going coming up is that our My Safety Starts With Me workshop series, because clearly post pandemic, people want to be able to do things on their
Mhm.
own time. So the goal is
Mhm.
that everyone join our global community of safety, right? So we can't do it all, but you can purchase or have me come out to train, or you can just purchase it. And so the idea would be, oh, you're a teacher at your school, you all get the My Safety Starts With Me, and now you got a group of teachers who can teach, because you're going to always have kids coming to this school. So
I love
it's
that.
one of those things where we're growing because
Mhm.
the young people need to know these things, right? All we know is technology is going to
Absolutely.
continue to advance. And so we have to let
Yeah.
them know. So that is something that we have. And then I have my book, which I like to use as a resource. Everything that we do is
Mm.
resource related. I want you to be able to know
Mhm.
and know where to go, and where can you go if such and such happens. That needs to be the situation. Like,
Mhm.
oh, I have this situation. Okay, then this is where I need to go.
Mhm.
I want people to feel empowered to know where to go. Um, and so we have.
And what do you talk about in your
So
book?
it is the stories of child sexual abuse survivors. They're all adults, my story included. They are from all walks of life. Some from the United States, some from abroad. None of them have ever met before, but they are all connected
Mm.
by this issue, right? And so it's just like, this is
Wow.
fully
Yeah.
preventable, right? So we talk about, you know,
Mhm.
using correct anatomical terms for body parts. It's very much, and listen, I'm going to tell you the truth. It's a hard read, but you need to read it, right? You need to
Yeah.
read it and
Mhm.
understand, um, you know, how this works and what we can do again
Mhm.
to prevent it, and how those steps work out. So that's what the book is all about. And then our 5K, that's our annual um, fundraiser. And so it really started out, if I'm being all honest with y'all, I was like, listen, I'm going to start this out. It's going to be around my birthday. So this is how I want y'all to celebrate my birthday. I want y'all to come out to the race, right?
Yeah.
But it's a fun time for
Mhm.
us to be able to mobilize parents, families, communities, young people, businesses, and we're all coming out. And one, we're being healthy because we're actually doing a 5K. Now, listen,
Mhm.
run or walk. Okay, some people do either.
Run or
Some
walk. I
people
love
be
that.
just out there supporting other folks, right? But it's a
Yeah.
way to
Run, walk, and take some
listen,
pictures for
listen,
somebody.
exactly. Um, but the idea really is, again, expanding out our global community. And so we have been in
Mhm.
34 states. We're trying, our goal is to have participants in all 50 states. So right now we're at 34 states and 3 countries. It's virtual because, again, people support us all. So the
Incredible.
virtual race week is November 3rd through the 9th. So people will be, they'll be in California, and they'll snap their pictures and say,
Yeah.
"Oh, rediscover your life."
And if you want to show up, where's it going to
Miramar
be
Regional
physically
Park
held?
in Miramar, Florida,
Okay.
on
Okay.
November 9th. And so that's where it's going to be in person, or in person. And so it really is a good time. The young people down here in Florida, they have to have so many hours of community service to graduate. So it's a good time for the young people to come
Mhm.
out and volunteer so that they can get their community service hours. And at the end of the day, what I
That's
want people to
amazing.
understand is, even though we have those workshops and that the topic is what it is, we
Mhm.
have a good time. It's fun. I think as soon as people hear, child sexual abuse is like doom and gloom. No, we have a good time. We can't not have fun. I'm a fun person. The young
That's
people, we have
important.
a good
That's
time.
important.
So
Fun loving and faith fueled. I
that's
love that.
it. So those are the things that we're doing, but we would love to, do trainings. We love to do workshops. Like all the things, we're here. We are here doing.
Star, your name is so fitting because you shine so bright. You really do. Your smile, your energy, your aura, everything shines so bright. And if you had one piece of advice that you could give to any woman who's going through anything right now, what could you say to her to put a little spark back into her halo?
Mm, I would say that first, I see you. I love you. Um, I know that your journey has had its ups and downs, but with each step forward, with each step, it brings you closer to reclaiming um, your true self and refusing to settle for a narrative that wasn't yours to begin with. That's what I would say.
Star, thank you so much for sharing with us. We
Thank
love
you. I
you.
love you. You are awesome. It's your voice for me. You have a
Thank
soothing
you.
voice.
Thank you. It's just you for me. And that's been another episode of Healing Her Halo.